What do you do if you want to have children, but the woman you have just met or in a long-term relationship with tells you that she never wants kids? Should you stay? Should you leave? Can you compromise? What is the solution and what is the best thing for you to do? Well, this is what I'm going to cover throughout this video. I'm going to give you the answer and I'm going to clear up many of the doubts that you may be facing throughout this situation. So whether you are single, just start dating someone, or in a long-term relationship, this video is for you. So let's start with the Bible verse. Psalms 127 verse 3 tells us that children are a heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. So children are a blessing. So as a man, when you want kids, but the woman does not, it can become a deal breaker because it's a fundamental difference in life goals. And it can be an issue for a few reasons. Number one, it's a different life goal. For some people, having kids is a key part of their future. And if one person wants children and the other doesn't, you're on two different paths that are very hard to reconcile. And as I've mentioned many times throughout my videos for my long-term subscribers, one of the key ingredients to make a relationship or marriage work is compatibility. Your values, your life goals have to be aligned so you can see eye to eye, other than chemistry, finding each other attractive. And a lot of people, you will get together with a woman who you may have some things in common which are great, but when it comes to children, you may disagree. And you can't really compromise on having kids. You either have them or you don't. The next reason is due to an emotional impact. The person who wants kids might feel unfulfilled or resentful if they stay in the relationship where the desire isn't met. And over time, this can lead to emotional frustration and regret, putting strain on the relationship. You know, there's cases of guys, they think, okay, the longer I leave it, if I give it more time in the relationship, she'll change. But this is just going to frustrate you, make you angry, because you know you want to change her. Next is relationship tension. This is going to lead, obviously, you not just being frustrated, but it's going to spill over into how you react, how you treat her, how you communicate, such as constant arguing about this big decision, which leads to more resentment. Especially her being the woman who doesn't want kids, she might feel pressured, she might spoon feed you a white lie to keep you on the hook, and they might feel like, and you might feel obviously like your dream of having a family is ignored. And this is going to affect the health of your relationship. I mean, things will just deteriorate. Because the next reason is there's just no middle ground. Unlike other relationship issues, you can't really meet in the middle of having kids. You know, one of you, one might sacrifice the desire for children or agree to have kids against their wishes. But this often leads to long-term dissatisfaction. And, you know, I know it's easy to sit here and say, well, kids will make everybody happy. There are rare cases of some men and women that have dysfunction, they have trauma from their past. There's something wrong with them psychologically, and they're not a good fit to be a mother or a father. And subconsciously, some people who are dysfunctional, or like they're very sinful, they're wicked, they're evil, there's something wrong with them. They might know deep down that then they would never be a good mother or father. So that's why they don't want kids. And sometimes you have to look at that at face value. I've seen many cases over the years of guys that have gotten into a relationship with a woman. Maybe she settled for him. She never wanted to have kids. I mean, she was like a hardcore feminist, but she had kids anyway because why not? They turn into terrible mothers. You'd think that would soften them, make them more nurturing, but you have to be a husband and a wife before you're a father or a mother. And for these crazy feminists, if they don't love their husband and honor him, they're not, and obviously they don't love themselves, they're not even going to properly be able to love or honor these kids. And then the kids grow up in a crazy home with screwed up mommy because the guy married a feminist and tried to convince her to have kids. It just doesn't work. So it'll lead to dissatisfaction there. Next up is postponing the issue. Hoping that the other person will eventually change their mind is risky. How much time are you going to give them? 6 more months, a year, 2 years, 3 years? The older you are, for men or women, your fertility reaches a point where it's like there's a wall. For women, like the egg carton dries up in the 30s, right? That's, optimally speaking, you want to have your kids in your 20s. I know that's not possible for most people nowadays, but mid-20s, late 20s, maybe early 30s, if you take good care of your health, it's doable, it's possible. And even for men think that, they can get away with having kids at an older age in life, but your sperm quality drops in your 30s as a man. So taking care of your health and your fertility, you can prolong that, but it doesn't change the fact that marrying and having kids when you're more youthful, so that you get to see them grow older. If they have kids young, they have their grandchildren, you get more time with more of your descendants. I mean, it's just a net positive. So how much are you going to risk by you not walking away from a woman that doesn't want kids? Because you wasting 2 more months, 6 more months, a year, 5 years with her, that's up to 5 years off of you ever having children. That's 5 years less of you with your children and your grandchildren, because that's 5 years of your life that you don't get back. So how much are you going to delay? Because delaying this decision can lead to feelings of time wasted and even more tension as the biological clock ticks. Both for men and women. I remember going back a few years, when I was younger, I had an ex, and she never wanted kids. And every time I bring up the topic, no, I don't want kids. Very masculine, very career oriented. And in my mind, it was like, okay, I mean, we find each other attractive, and we're both young. Her mind will change. I'll fix her, right? I'll pray for her. But she just never, even after she tried to get in touch with me after we'd broken up, I asked the same question, still didn't want kids. And it would cause so much frustration. And it was only, I remember a few times, because she could see I wanted to walk away, she'd kind of lied to me and say, it's okay, maybe we can have one. And I was like, I don't want just one kid. I want multiple children. I want a family. I want them to have siblings. I want sons and daughters. I don't want one. If all I can have is one and I get a fertility test and that's all I can do, sure. But I don't just want to compromise on one. I want a big family. And she was like, no, that's the best I can do, one. Like, she didn't want kids. So her saying, oh, I'll give you one, it was like, she was compromising. But she didn't really want that. And I came to my realization, like, she obviously wouldn't have been a good mom. Some women, they just don't have it in them. There's something wrong with them and they ain't right with God. She definitely wasn't. And I learned that lesson the hard way. Luckily, I walked away while still being young, so I was safe, but it was very frustrating being in a relationship with a woman like that. Luckily, the girl I have now in my life, I mean, she's amazing, and I don't have these problems. We're on the same page. But for you guys listening, what I have just told you might resonate with you. Be very careful. And this can also lead to regret later in life. So the partner who wanted kids might look back and regret staying in a childless relationship, feeling like they missed out on something important in life. This regret can strain the relationship even more as time goes on. I remember growing up, my parents, it was a friend of my parents, and it was this guy who was always single, and he was going from relationship to relationship. And he eventually found this woman. She was very weird, and she never wanted kids, because you hear conversations when you're a young boy, a teenager, you listen in to what people say. And she never wanted kids with him, but they ended up getting married. And he asked her after they got married, come on, let's try and have kids. No. And last I heard, to this day, I mean, it's been a decade or so has passed, and they're still married but childless. And he is completely miserable. The life is sucked out of this guy. He's just so hurt and upset. He was even willing to adopt kids, and she just didn't give a damn. And it's like, this is what happens when you're with someone incompatible like this. There is no middle ground. And it was like everybody warned him when he was dating her, don't marry her, she doesn't want a family, you do. And in his mind, it was like, okay, maybe if I put a ring on it and I marry her, now she'll finally want the same things as me. And it's like, no, you figure this stuff out at the beginning. Okay? I even heard a story of one of my neighbours, the nephew. The nephew came over from, was it Norway or whatever country it is, and telling us the story. He was been with his girlfriend for 4 years. They got engaged, and guess what happened? They had a conversation about children, and she said, I don't want kids. And he's like, what? I want a family. And she's like, no, I don't really want kids. They kind of settled and they didn't really talk about it. And they broke off the engagement and they walked away from each other. 4 years of his life wasted when you could have had this conversation at the beginning. It's not worth trying to see it through. Hope that I made that clear. So in conclusion, the decision to have or not have kids is a big deal that cannot be easily compromised. If a couple cannot agree, it's going to lead to frustration, resentment, and an emotional conflict, making it a deal breaker. You might be watching this, and there's the exception. There's guys out there that don't want kids, and there's some women that also don't want kids. For whatever reason, you have your own justification, and you just don't. And that's fine. You can leave it at that. But if you have just met a woman, I would recommend you ask this question immediately. Whether you match on a dating app and you pick up the phone and call her, you meet her in person, you're talking. When you have your first date, ask these questions. Hey, what are your thoughts on children? And if she says, oh, I love kids, I can't wait to have a family, bingo. If she's like, oh, I haven't really thought about it, I don't really want that. I'm more focused on my career. I'd rather freeze my eggs. Yikes, right? Okay, prevention is better than cure. And finally, if you're in a relationship, and right now you're watching this and you're struggling, you're with a girlfriend, you've been together for a while, before you make that decision to marry, don't make the mistake of those two people that I made. Don't make the mistake of the two people that I mentioned just before. If you are in a relationship, you need to figure out exactly what you both agree on. Lay down the law now. Make it known what you want if you haven't. And if you've had this yo-yo conversation, figure out the next step, which is this. If a woman has health complications that would lead to her death during childbirth, because some women get tests done and the doctors tell them if you have kids, you die. It can happen. It's rare, but it can happen. The other option is if she's had tests done and she's infertile, or she's had severe trauma, like when she was a kid, maybe she was taken advantage of. I can't say the word on YouTube or you get demonetized and banned. But if she was taken advantage of when she was young, this trauma can affect her and scare her from being intimate and wanting a family. Completely understandable, it does happen. And those are justifiable reasons. If she would die during childbirth and she knows this, if she's done the tests and she's infertile, or she has severe trauma, and these are her reasons for not wanting children, they are valid. But here's the next thing. If she is truly feminine, and she loves children, and she loves you, and she'd love to try and have a family with you, you can opt for adoption if you are willing, and she is willing. I know family friends from growing up who did this. They couldn't have kids. They tried everything, IVF, you name it, and they adopted. And then what happened was years later, in the cases where this couple, they were infertile, I think the wife was, she got her fertility back by a miracle. And later in life, she was older, but they were already established and married and had an adopted child. She got pregnant and they had a child of their own. And it's also a blessing. So I wouldn't give up on a woman if she's infertile and you really love her and you're willing to adopt. Because if you really fix your health and with all the new advances coming out soon, she might be okay. But she has to be willing to. And if you agree, solid. But beware of women who do not have any valid reason that I've just mentioned for not wanting children. These are the ones that are more likely to date for self-gain. There's something seriously wrong with them internally, whether it's sin, whether it's, they're wicked, they're evil, they're just a hardcore feminist, and they, something inside them has caused them to reject their maternal instinct. Run. Especially for the young guys watching. You deserve a woman who in her youth, in her prime, just like you, she'll commit herself to you and she wants to give you her best years and have a family with you, and at least she's willing to try. Avoid women that dislike children. That is such a red flag. A woman that's, if her nurturing side doesn't come out when she sees a cute baby or children, there's something really wrong with her. She's cold in her heart, and these are women that do not only, they make terrible mothers, but they make even worse wives. Run like the wind. If you're dating a girl and she's healthy, she's beautiful, to your knowledge and her knowledge, there's no fertility issues, nothing happened to her when she was younger. There's no risk of her having any problems during pregnancy, but she's focused on her career. She doesn't want kids, it's not a priority. Or she does what my ex did. Oh, I'll maybe give you one, but it's just a compromise. And she doesn't really want to be a mother. She's not passionate about having children with you. Maybe she's settling for you and doesn't think you're really handsome. Or maybe there's just something wrong with her. Either way, it doesn't matter what the reason is. If she doesn't want children, and there's no valid reason for her to not want them, and she hates children, she dislikes them, she finds them annoying, she's not maternal at all, run. Go out there and be single, dump her ass, and go find yourself a woman who does want a family. Because one of the purposes of marriage is not just to join a man and a woman together, but to be fruitful, to multiply, and have beautiful children that resemble their ancestors. Okay? Beautiful. And that is what you should do. Gentlemen, if she doesn't want kids, you send her out the door. On to the next. With that said, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below, what you'd like to see next. And I'll leave links as well down in the description to my relationship community. I hope to see some of you in there. And with that said, hope you'll have a wonderful day. God bless all of you and your families.